That is incredible. There are so much threats to the net users. Nandita ma'am, are there any more?
Well, you should also be aware of the additional threats to the network.
Additional threats? What could they be, ma'am?
Besides all the viruses and spyware, there are some additional threats. Let me tell you. Let's start with SQL. The full form of SQL, often pronounced as SQL, is Structured Query Language. SQL accesses and lets you manipulate databases. As the technology grew, the websites also started becoming more technologically advanced as well as dynamic in nature. This dynamism generated need to store input of the user and content of the site in databases. A program to do the same was needed, and SQL was developed and added to almost every popular scripting language. But it also became vulnerability, as it allowed an attacker to inject malicious input into an SQL statement. A very simple example of a metro train running between 4 stations A, B, C and D can be studied to understand this phenomenon a little better. The train has been programmed to halt at stations only if some passenger were waiting at the platform. Otherwise, it does not halt there. The train keeps on moving to the next station, and so on and so forth. If someone with malicious intent changes this programming statement and instructs the metro train to ignore passengers waiting at the middle 2 B and C stations and halt at the end in D station only, it will create a big jam and the whole metro train system is likely to come to a grinding halt until the right program or the process becomes effective. Same thing happens when SQL injection is used. It changes the program by giving invalid inputs, and as a result, the site gets compromised. Same thing happens when SQL injection is used. It changes the program by giving invalid inputs, and as a result, the site gets compromised. Technically speaking, fundamentally, an input validation error is what the SQL injection is all about. These vulnerabilities surface when an application which interacts with a database and in an unsafe manner allows passage of data to an SQL query, as we saw in the case of Metro above. Remember, when the data is mistaken as instructions, the SQL injection attack impact can include leakage of sensitive data to the public, the destruction of the entire database or website defacement. SQL injections has been rated as the #1 most dangerous security vulnerability out of all the types of security intrusions and has almost constantly and consistently remained amongst the top vulnerabilities for a long period. There have been instances when millions of web pages were affected by SQL injections in just 1 month, and there was economic disruption too as a result. More recently, SQL injection attack was reported to have been used in high-profile attacks against organizations such as Sony Pictures. SQL impact on business sites can be very far-reaching. A successful attack may result in the unauthorized viewing of user lists, the deletion of entire tables, and, in certain cases, the attacker gaining administrative rights to a database, all of which are highly detrimental to a business. When calculating the potential cost of an SQLI, it is important to consider the loss of customer trust should personal information such as phone numbers, addresses, and credit card details are stolen. While this vector can be used to attack any SQL database, websites are the most frequent targets.
Are there any measures that user can undertake to prevent SQL injection attacks?
It is mostly the designers of website who do something to prevent these attacks. However, the most important thing for the user is the awareness of it. User should ensure that he updates his systems regularly. The user should always patch his systems to prevent him from becoming the medium through which these attacks could be launched.